You are listening to TBR Radio Presents The DIXIE Heritage Show, with your host, the Director of DIXIE Heritage, Dr. Ed DeVries.
Welcome back to another edition of TBR Radio Presents The DIXIE Heritage Show. Our guest on today's show is going to be Dave Gahary, and Dave is the publisher behind several of the authors that we have interviewed here on TBR Radio in the last couple of years. Maybe you'll remember on my other radio show, TBR Radio Presents the TBR History Hour, I had interviewed Jack Graham, who was the author of Blood Money and the Civil War, and that was one of the many books that Dave Gahary and his varying publishing companies are publishing and putting out there for the world, and he's doing a great service to us, especially those of us who would call ourselves conservatives or who would call ourselves Americans. And he's just putting a lot of great truth out there, printing a lot of books actually that other publishing companies refuse to touch because of the content that's in them. But before we start talking about that, Dave and I talk about more important things like Whataburger and greens and just good Southern food. And we have producers, a bunch of Yankees. And what do they know about things that are important to Southerners? And so they're scratching their heads wondering, why is our host and his guest wasting our airtime talking about these things? And, they're sending me little messages. But the reality is I know what is important to my audience because we're Southerners and we know what's important to us. And so Dave and I are going to talk about those things for the first few minutes, and then we'll get into more important subjects. So were you in Pensacola then? Because you said there was a Whataburger in your town, and I'm thinking, I know There's one in Pensacola. I know there's one in Tallahassee. If there's one in between those 2 points, I never found it. So
yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm in Crestview.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, we just recently got our Whataburger, maybe about a year ago or so.
Okay.
And so we're on exit 56 off of I-10. Yeah, like you said, Tallahassee, right? And that's about 150 miles from us. And then we've got it. And then I think the next one is in Pace, which is kind of part of Milton.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, Pensacola has a few. And then if you go down to Fort Walton, south of us, then they've got several Whataburgers. And there's some in Destin as well. Well, Popeyes is probably all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to think what's unique to down here.
Of course,
I don't know.
I was a pastor for 13 years in Texas, and I lived at Whataburger for all 13 of those years. So.
Yeah. Yeah, Whataburger's good. Yeah, as a matter of fact, they just sent me a coupon in email.
They took the Monterey melt off of the menu, I don't know.
No, that was my favorite.
A few years ago, I guess, and maybe they put it back on, I don't know.
Well, I just had one just not too long ago.
Because whenever I would go through Tallahassee, she was older black lady, managed the Whataburger over there, in the middle of the university, the Florida State University area there.
Yes.
And the one that was on Highway 27 or whatever. And so anyways, I would go in there and it wasn't on the menu, but I'd gone, I was like, I would have to drive through there, I don't know, about maybe once a month or something. And so after they took it off the menu, I asked her, I said, well, would you make me one or whatever? I said, because I drove all the way up here from Ocala, just to have these things. And so every time I would come in, she would tell whoever was back there how to make it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so they don't have them down in. I'm surprised that they don't have them down there in that part of Florida.
There was one in Ocala, and there was one in Stark, which is about an hour from Ocala. And I want to say around maybe 2014 or 15. They closed. One of them is still sitting empty. When we moved from Ocala back in February, it was still sitting empty.
Right.
And the one in Stark became a Dickie's Barbecue, and I don't know what it is now. It's something else. It's not even a Dickie's anymore. And I asked, why they closed.
Right.
And because I emailed Whataburger, and I asked them, I said, why are you closing the restaurants, man? We love these things. And they said that essentially what it was that it was too far from their supply, that they were like the furthest end of their supply chain. And they couldn't justify the expense of extending their supply chain.
Yes.
For 2 restaurants.
Yes. Well, I guess that kind of makes sense. It sucks. But
yeah.
Yeah, that's another one that we got was Chick-fil-A. So we got that in our town, which is very popular, as you might know, a cult following. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think what we got because Crestview. Have you ever been to Crestview?
I have. It's been a number of years.
Yeah. It's kind of like not really much happening here. We have an Applebee's. We have a Walmart. We don't have much more than that, but we just started to get some stuff like the Chick-fil-A. Whataburger was here. We got a Panda Express, which, is a big deal for this town. But the good southern stuff is here. The South really is, a beautiful, beautiful place to be, especially now.
I can't remember where it was. It was in the Panhandle. I think it was closer to Pensacola. But this has probably been 10 years ago now.
Right.
And they used to have some of these buffets down in South Florida as well. And when I say South Florida, I'm talking like, Orlando, Melbourne.
Yep.
I'm not talking like as far south as like Miami and stuff.
Sure.
But they were called Barn Hills.
Never had that.
The building looked like a big red barn, and there was a rooster on top. And every time the door would open, it would trigger some kind of a switch. And however many times the door opened, the rooster on top of the building would crow.
Yeah.
And if the rooster crowed, that meant that whoever was walking through the door when the rooster crowed got a free buffet.
Really?
Yeah. And but I remember going to the one in it might have been Pace. I don't remember. It was closer to Pensacola. But anyways, but I remember going into this place about 10 years ago to eat lunch one day, and I don't know why. I got some fried chicken. I got, some of the other stuff that I would normally get, some meatloaf, some other things I would normally get. And I got a little helping of greens.
Right.
And I go back and I eat. And these greens were so good, I went back and I probably got like 4 more plates of heaping plates of just greens.
Oh, yeah.
And the waitress was like, I have never seen anybody just, sit here and eat greens like you have been. But, I mean, they were just that good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They know how to do it down here.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Food's important.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, so you went all the way from Florida to Maryland, huh?
Yeah.
Jeez.
And
wow, that's a change.
Yeah. The tropical storm blew through here today. It's already done. I'm looking sunshine out my window now, but
oh, nice.
Yeah, this morning, I mean, it was like I had to fight the wind just to get in my truck.
Wow.
And I was driving down the road, and I'm thinking for a low-grade tropical storm, it looks like I'm, driving through a Florida town after a hurricane.
Whoa.
I just couldn't believe the trees and stuff must just be weak up here. That's all I can figure.
Wow, well, you're lucky you're getting some rain. We could sure use it here.
I've got a friend of mine in Dothan, Alabama, and
yeah, I know what that is. Yep.
Yeah, and he was telling me that it hadn't rained in however long, and yeah, he's telling me he's like my peach trees in his yard look like they're about to die, and
yes, we had a drought here. May was really bad. Dothan too, because that's not too far from us, and June was a little better, not much, but July we got wet, and it saved us. And now August, of course, just started, but the grass in May was actually it turned brown, and we didn't water because the water bill would have been just too much. And now it's green, it's lush, it's not as good as it could be, but we sure could use some rain. Hopefully we'll get some this week coming up. They said there might be some, so it's been, since we moved here over 5 years ago, it's been pretty much drought, constant droughts. And I don't know how it is that this town and Fort Walton Beach are ranked as the first and second highest rain in Florida. So I just don't know how they could say that, because for the half a decade we've been here, that's not the case. You guys never have a problem with rain. When I was living in New Jersey, we never had a problem with rain, but this place is like the desert. So I commiserate with your friend in Dothan. It's not good. Hopefully it'll snap out of it and we'll get some rain.
Open your web browser and type in www.barnesreview.org and discover the Barnes Review magazine. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There is no more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review magazine in its print form, or in convenient electronic delivery. Our host has been a subscriber to both formats for years. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review.
How many books have you published?
But I got 20 books, I counted them.
Wow.
So 20 books, and of course, 20 books plus the t-shirt, at the Liberty t-shirt, which there's tons of variations of that, the navy and white, plus all the different sizes from small all the way to tall, and also 6XL. And then we also have the DVD for Hellstorm, and we have the audiobook for Hellstorm. So we have 20 books, t-shirts, and DVDs and audiobooks. So a total of 23 products.
Wow. So you were writing for the American Free Press, writing for the Barnes Review, writing for other publications, and still do. And so what made you decide to transition from writing to publishing?
I started working for AFP back in 2010 when I went to a AFP conference in Washington, D.C. that had Jim Trafficant there, and a buddy of mine had told me about AFP, and then I started to pay attention to it and realized that, doing all my research, that AFP was really the only publication that had the guts to talk about the enemy. And then at that time, as I said, Jim Trafficant, they're having a conference for Trafficant in DC at that Capitol Heights Hotel, and I had decided that I was going to go there, meet the people there, and see if I could offer my services. Of course, I had done radio for a few years, regular terrestrial radio, and the last radio I was on was one of the Pacifica Radio Network stations in New York City, and I had interviewed a bunch of guests like Hillary Clinton and the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, other senators and congressmen, and I was moving, evolving to the next level away from the mainstream. And so I went there in February. It was like they just had a blizzard there in DC, and I don't think that the people there are accustomed to plowing. So it was a disaster. I met Trafficant, I met the AFP people, I started doing interviews for them. And then I was asked a short time after that if I could start writing articles for the newspaper because I was doing the interviews and they were going up up on the website, and so I started writing for them.
Extra, read all about it.
If you're like me, and I'll bet you are, you like to be on the cutting edge of honest news and accurate information. 26 times a year, the American Free Press newspaper can be delivered to your door, packed with the kind of uncensored news that I know you're going to appreciate. If you're ever dissatisfied with your subscription to the American Free Press, their guarantee is that you just drop them an email and they will gladly refund the unused portion of your subscription. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.americanfreepress.net. Once again, www.americanfreepress.net. And find out about the American Free Press. Do it today.
Extra, extra, read all about
It
it.
interviewed Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
So what was that like?
You know, it was interesting because that was the only interview I ever did where I actually met the person. All the other interviews I did over the phone or over Skype or sitting in a radio station. And this one, I met her face to face. Physical characteristics of an individual really should not have any bearing on anything. They shouldn't. They're really not applicable, the way somebody looks. But I was taken aback by her physical appearance. And I had never seen anything like that in my life. And I know thousands of people, and I've met thousands of people. I've been next to thousands of people, you know, in close proximity to people. Of course, you know, I was on a submarine in the Navy. I mean, you're pretty close to people on a submarine. But there was something about her. And she doesn't look like she does on television, that's for sure. And her face, I don't know. I don't know what the right word is, but it was jarring to be next to her, as close as I was, literally an inch away, 2 inches away. I talked to Victor Thorne about it. He had also not interviewed her, but he had been in a position to be relatively close to them, you know, maybe, you know, 50 feet or whatever it might be. And he described it as what I was describing. He was explaining that's evil, you know, that's pure evil. And maybe it was, I don't know. But whatever it was something that, you know, had an effect on me, where I never, you know, had that kind of a reaction just to, you know, meeting somebody like that, you know, that, you know, her face, you know, the pock marks in it, and just the feeling I got from being next to her was something I never experienced before.
So then are those pock marks, are they covered with a lot of makeup when she's on TV, or do they just not appear there? Or?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. They're covered with a lot of makeup, and I don't know what they're from, obviously, why someone would get these pock marks. Is it from the makeup, or is it, I don't know what, but being right next to her, they were huge. But it wasn't just that, you know, I mean, I've seen, obviously, pock marks on people before. So it's not the pock marks in themselves that created this reaction, but something else. And like I said, I don't quite know, I still don't quite know what it is.
So was it in her eyes? Because sometimes you can see evil in people's eyes.
It was something was oozing out of her that was uncomfortable for me. I've never experienced that before or after. No, and she was very personable, and, you know, she put me at ease right away, and she straightened out my microphone, the wire to it, and she was just nice. She actually she was giving a speech in a hospital in Manhattan, and I had been trying to get her on the radio to interview her on the station I was on in Manhattan, WBAI. She was just tough, to nail down. She was a senator at the time from New York, even though she's from Chicago or Illinois. I was talking to her press person, and it was just tough to line her up. And so, because I had tried for as long as I did, the press person remembered and said, "Dave, can you be at Mount Sinai Hospital on this, this date and this time?" And I said, "Sure." So I went there, and she gave her prepared remarks up on, the platform, surrounded by the media and I guess other people in the hospital who came to see Hillary Clinton, because she does have a lot of fans. She's kind of a celebrity. I don't know as much now as she was then, but what she did was, I guess because the press person had told her to, when she was done with her prepared remarks, she came off of the stage and she went straight across, and I was toward the back of this room, and she came straight to me before any of the other reporters, and which was pretty cool, because, like I said, I'm sure her press person told her, "Hey, Dave's been trying to get you for 2 months, can you go to him first?" And she did, and like I said, she straightened out my microphone and she answered my questions, and she was very polished and political, and it's hard to trip up, a person like that, because they're well versed in how to handle questions, and apply this political spin to it. So it was just the physical characteristics that had an impact on me, but otherwise she was a really good politician.
Hello, I'm Tom Strain, Lieutenant Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. The Confederate flag, Confederate symbols, and the reputation of our Confederate ancestors has come under attack. The Sons of Confederate Veterans is actively fending off our detractors, but there is only so much that we can do. We need your help. Contact your local, state, and national elected politicians and tell them that you will not tolerate these attacks on our heritage. You can also visit scv.org, download an application to join us in our fight to preserve our Southern heritage. Visit scv.org today. If you don't have a Confederate ancestor and you are tired of American history disappearing, you can assist us by becoming a friend of the SCV. Please visit scvheritagedefense.org and make a donation to the Heritage Defense Fund. We hope that you will join us in the fight to defend the Confederate soldiers' good name.
I've never met Hillary. I've never been in the same room as Hillary Clinton. I've never seen her other than on television or in photographs. But I did meet Bill Clinton once. And the way that came about is I used to play golf on Mondays with a Pentecostal pastor in Texas, where I was at the time. And before he became a pastor, he, for a number of years, was a state trooper in the state of Arkansas, and he was on the governor's protection detail. And he was one of Clinton's confidants. In fact, he told me the story one time that Clinton handed him an envelope which contained his resignation letter. And apparently Clinton had tried to resign as governor of Arkansas several times and was never allowed to do so.
Huh.
And so Clinton had drafted a resignation letter, and he gave it to this state trooper, and he told him, he said, "Take it to such and such TV station. I want you to deliver it directly to," and he gave him the name of one of the big editors at the TV station, "and tell him that I want the contents of this envelope read on the news this evening." So he told me, he said that he drove down to the TV station. He asked to see so-and-so. They told him, where to go. He went into this man's office. He hands him the letter. And he says the man doesn't even open it. He hands the envelope right back to him. He says, "You tell Governor Clinton that we have too much money invested in him and he's not allowed to resign."
Wow.
He loved Clinton. But the reason he gave up being a state trooper was he could not stand Hillary.
Yes.
And in fact, at one point he had even gone in, I guess he told Governor Clinton, he said, "If you want me to stay here," he said, "I can't work the detail at your cabin," because he just couldn't handle going up there and having to be up there when Hillary had her lesbian buddies up there. He's like, I can't handle that.
Yes, I've heard that. I've heard about that as well.
And
I've interviewed Secret Service agents who have a lot to say about her. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so he's pastoring in the Houston, Texas area. I'm pastoring in the Houston, Texas area. We both are members of the same golf club, and a lot of times we would end up playing our round together on Mondays. And we're out on the golf course one day. And I'll tell you this story before I tell you that story. Another day we're on the golf course, and I'm talking about, for whatever reason, something that was in the newspaper at the time. And it had to do with Bill, and it had to do with his sexual proclivity and, some other things. And he just interrupted me. He said, "Ed, if you only knew Hillary, you'd cut Bill some slack right now."
Yeah.
But Bill Clinton was in town, and he was doing a fundraiser at the Four Seasons Hotel in Houston. And he asked me, he said, "Would you like to meet President Clinton?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Who doesn't want to meet the president?"
Right.
And so he says, "Okay." He says, "Well, I've got a friend of mine, and he's a Secret Service agent, and he's on the detail." And he said, "I talked to him, and he's going to arrange it for me to meet Bill Clinton." He said, "You come with me." I said, "Okay." So we go to the Four Seasons Hotel. We're sitting in the back of the room in this fundraiser, and Clinton gives a speech. And then afterwards, he leaves the banquet room and he goes up to his suite. And a few minutes later, Secret Service agent says, "Yeah, we can go up, to see the president." And so we go up a service elevator, and they take us to the room, and we walk into the room. And up until this point, I absolutely disdained Bill Clinton.
Yes.
And I really didn't talk to him. We walked into the room, and as soon as the president saw us, this pastor friend, his name was Ben Mangus, he looks up, he says, "Ben Mangus," he says, "what are you doing here, man?" He says, "Come over here, give me a hug." And so Ben goes over there, he gives Clinton a hug, and then Clinton says, "This is a friend of mine, he's Pastor Ed DeVries," and so Bill Clinton shakes my hand, and then he looks back over at Ben, and they talk for about 4 or 5 minutes, just, personal stuff, chit-chat, whatever. And Clinton looks at him, he's like, "Man, I would love to sit here and talk with you all day, but I got to do this and I got to do that." He's like, "But, man, I am so glad you came to see me today." And with that, it was like the Secret Service agent was kind of like, nudging us to the door. And the whole thing lasted maybe 4 or 5 minutes.
Right.
But I walked in there totally loathing Bill Clinton, and I walked out of there in love with the guy.
Yeah, I've heard that same thing from people, that same exact thing. So, yes. As a matter of fact, that Secret Service agent who I interviewed said that same exact thing. You couldn't help but love the guy. Uh-huh. So he had that ability, he had that characteristic about him.
And on that note, we are out of time for this week's TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Show. But Dave will continue to be my guest today, so flip on over there to our next show, TBR Radio Presents the TBR History Hour. And Dave and I will have a conversation more specifically about his publishing company and the books that they publish. And I know that you'll want to tune in for that as well. In the meantime, go to my website, www.dixieheritage.net. Sign up for my free weekly email newsletter, and when you do, I'll also send you absolutely free a copy of my book, The Truth About the Confederate Battle Flag. Also go to Dave's website, turningthetidepublishing.com, and some great books there. You'll want to avail yourself to those as well. Anyways, as I said, we are out of time, so I am going to bid you adieu. But don't worry, I will be back here again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. So until then, from all of us here at TBR Radio, God bless, and we'll be back with you again next week.